South Africa would actually start playing again. But when Nelson Mandela let it be known that he thought they should be invited to the 1992 World Cup, everything happened in a rush.
Well, we'll do everything in our power to support your application.
Thank you.
Suddenly, over the news wires, came this announcement that South African side's going to India next week. And, you know, we heard it all before, and things had fallen through and all that. So I was saying to my wife, oh, well, you know, that's another thing that's probably never going to happen. That Sunday night, the side was selected, and I was in the side, and suddenly we were back.
That game, nearly 8,000 days after South Africa's last match of official international cricket, took place at Eden Gardens in Calcutta, and to no one's great surprise, ended in defeat. 3 months later, though, as South Africa played in their first ever World Cup, it was a very different story as the likes of Jonty Rhodes announced themselves on the world stage and powered the new boys into a semi-final against England, only for the now infamous rain rule to deny them a tilt at World Cup glory.
Before the rain came, we needed 22 or 13 deliveries. I think we had 3 or 4 wickets in hand. Brian McMillan, Dave Richardson were going well. England had bowled out their frontline bowlers, so it was set up for a cliffhanger of a finish. But of course, once the rain came, that was that.
In many ways, it was a night and a competition that would sum up South Africa's fortunes throughout the 90s. There were moments of great success, including a win against England at Lord's on their first tour back. But there were also disappointing defeats. Barbados in 1992, the famous Devon Malcolm match at the Oval in 1994, not to mention that other World Cup semi-final farce in 1999.
3 balls remaining, Quizner on strike. There it is. They go, this will be out, surely. It's out. It's going to be run out. That's it. South Africa out. Donald didn't run. I cannot believe it. Australia go into the World Cup final. What a disappointing end for South Africa.
So how much of that early inconsistency was down to the experience that was lost during the isolation years?
Yeah, I suppose from the international fold, there's no doubt. You know, not gaining that experience of touring India, touring Pakistan, subcontinent conditions, playing against the likes of the great West Indians at that time. All the experience that you gather over 20 years of international cricket. You just look at England and Australia, how they pass that information on, and how the stature of a team grows. I definitely think we would have lost a little bit in that period.
For much of the 1990s, South Africa's captain was Hansie Cronje, a much liked and widely respected leader of men. Cronje seemed to have it all. And when in 2000 he persuaded Nasser Hussain to agree to a series of declarations to set up a last-day run chase during a test at Centurion, the cricket world lauded him as a man who played the game the right way.
Nancy Hayward to Darren Gold. That's it. An absolute thriller here, and all credit to Hansie Cronje.
He's played in a terrific spirit. Well done, Cronje. Well done, South Africa.
Little did they know.
It was about 10 o'clock in the morning of April the 6th in 2000. I still remember it like yesterday.
Bronwyn Wilkinson was my communications manager. She was terrific. And she came into my office about 11 o'clock Friday morning that she'd picked up on the wires that there was a statement from the police in India about an allegation of Hansie being involved with bookmakers.
And he just said, oh, it's impossible, it's impossible, it's rubbish, absolute rubbish, and sort of walked away. And I said, well, that might be rubbish, we have to do something about it.
And I remember saying to Bronwyn, I said, oh, it's nonsense.
And he said, well, phone Hansie and see what Hansie says. So I phoned Hansie and I said, Hansie, this has come through from India, you've been charged with match fixing. And he just went, you've got to be kidding me. Sort of this snort, laugh type thing.
And he dismissed this allegation immediately, and I left it like that.
I have not received any money, and I have never ever spoken to any of the players.
We kind of thought that was it, but I had such a deep gut feel that this was going to be enormous. It was going to be huge.
She was right. Within days, Cronje had rung Dr. Backer in the middle of the night and admitted his guilt.
About 3 o'clock in the morning, I got a phone call from Hansie in Devon to indicate to me that I think he said, Doc, I haven't been telling you the truth. I remember saying to Hansie, have you taken money from bookmakers? He said yes. And I think that was the end of the conversation. And I just sat back on my bed for about half an hour I was shattered.
So too was the world of cricket.
Sanjay phoned me and urged me to go ahead with fixing the match, and I gave in. I told him that I would go ahead. I was required to ensure that Gibbs would score less than 20 runs, that Williams would bowl poorly and go for more than 50 runs during his 10 overs, and that the total score should be no more than 270 runs. I was to be paid for doing this.
Amidst tear-stained hearings to the King Commission, Cronje laid bare the extent of his involvement in match fixing, and the career of one of the most loved South African cricketers was over. Cronje would die 2 years later in a plane crash. The same could not be said, though, of what has become cricket's greatest scourge. With Cronje sacked in disgrace, his vice-captain Sean Pollock was now given the task of rebuilding South Africa's image.
To resell the brand, you had to get the faith back in and the belief back in that this team was going out there to compete and perform as well as they could. And that came down to winning big matches, performing in all different arenas, in the test matches, in the one-day arena, and producing quality performances.
And they did it with some success. Under Pollock's captaincy, they only lost one series to the all-conquering Australians in Australia. And slowly but surely the nation put behind itself the nightmare of Cronje and the betting scandal. On the night of March the 3rd, 2003, though, the Pollock era came to a grinding halt where, not for the first time in the country's history, rain and the World Cup proved a fatal combination, and the captain ended up carrying the can.
There's one ball to go in the over, one more run and they can come off the ground. If they do, and they get through. No run. 229 means a tie. Equal points. South Africa go out on equal points. It's no good for South Africa.
It's raining too hard. Now the crowd are going wild. What's going to happen here? At the moment, South Africa, they're out.
It got down to the Duckworth-Lewis situation, and I didn't say that.